You're listening to Mountain Heartbeat with Joe and Rosa Hopkins, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Hi, and welcome to Mountain Heartbeat. I'm Joe Hopkins. This week, Rosa will be continuing her interview with Jill Marquis, the Mobile Unit Coordinator for the Charlotte Pregnancy Resource Center.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what is so powerful that you're in this position on the front line speaking into them is it's not based on theory or on secondhand information, because you've been through it, you've lived it. Would you mind sharing your testimony with our listeners? What happened in your own life? What did you experience? And how did God turn that around to use that for good?
Oh gosh, I got married right out of college. It seemed like the thing to do. And I was married for about 3 years. And it's funny, looking back now, all the signs were there that I shouldn't get married, that I shouldn't marry this guy. Not that he wasn't a good guy, but just that he was not the person that I should marry. All of that to say, I got married right out of college, and just a few years into that marriage, I was unhappy and stepped outside the bounds of that marriage, had an affair, and got pregnant. And the thing that was really interesting about that was that I was on birth control at the time. How all that happened is a mystery to me, but nonetheless, my marriage was falling apart, and I was actively destroying it, having walked outside the bounds of it. So marriage was falling apart. I find out I'm pregnant, and I think to myself, I cannot get divorced if I am pregnant. And so I started moving very quickly. Once I got that positive pregnancy test, I was on the phone to a clinic on Monday and had an appointment on Thursday, and didn't tell anybody. I didn't speak with my mom. I didn't speak to my sisters. I didn't talk to anybody. And looking back now, I know that I didn't talk to anybody because I didn't want anyone to talk me out of it. My reality was I wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. And I felt like if I had that child, that I was going to be forever tied to a marriage I didn't want to be in. Because the other side of that coin, I guess, is that I had fallen in love with the man that I had the affair with. So, like I said, I made the appointment on Monday, went in on a Thursday, had the procedure done, and then got on a plane to New York City for some training and felt like, okay, this is done. It's over with. I've put it in this box. I'm moving on with my life. Proceeded to take one step after another and get divorced, and ended up marrying the man that I had the affair with, and only by God's grace can I say that we're going to celebrate 25 years of marriage this year. And I mean that sincerely, only by God's grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Our marriage lasted. Again, it was, for me, a decision that was made out of selfish motivation. I wanted to get divorced, wanted to be married to this other man, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And at that point in my life, there was no room for God, and I wasn't about to ask him, because I think down deep in my heart I knew what he was going to say to me. So, fast forward several years, like I said, I married the man that I had the affair with, and when we decided that we were ready for children, I thought that I had moved on, that was a part of my past that was over and was done with. And we wanted to have children, and so we decided, okay, now's the time. And Dan and I got pregnant, and it really wasn't until I was pregnant with our son that the decision that I made to have an abortion several years earlier really came back to me. When I was having an ultrasound with my son, and I see this baby, this fully formed little guy, it was at that point that there was just a deep quaking in me, and I came face to face with the decision that I had made. And it was at that point that I realized, oh my word, I bought a lie. This was not a clump of cells. This was not a simple procedure. This was a life. And those things started to resonate in different ways in my life. It colors your judgment when you make life disposable. It makes it easy to dispose of other things in your life. Things like relationships become throwaway if you allow that. And a lot of women do allow that. I've found that now. But God just really allowed me to walk through a very dark time when my children were small. We had our son, and then 2 years later we had a daughter. And just as I started to come to grips with what it was to have children in my life, I also started to realize that there was something that was missing in my life, and I didn't know what that was. There's a nebulous ache that made itself known, and I tried to quash that ache with things and with alcohol, and I did a lot of striving in my life because like I said, there was this ache and I didn't know how to fill it up, and so I was trying to fill it up with all different types of things. I do know now that women who choose abortion are 81% more likely to use and abuse drugs and alcohol. And in my own life, that played out with alcohol, probably a bottle of wine a night for many years. And I didn't quite put it together that I was trying to deal with this hurt by dulling it. As my husband and our family grew and were growing up together, we decided that we needed to find a church, and really found a church home when our son was approaching middle school age. And once we found a church home and started to get involved, I really started to understand that there were some things in my life that I needed to deal with, the abortion being the biggest one of them. And in a way that only God can orchestrate, I got very involved with the women's ministry in my church and ended up becoming the volunteer director of women's ministries at my church. And in that role, I felt like I'm struggling with this abortion decision in my past, and I need to deal with this, and I can't be the only one. And I think we need to have some kind of study for women, mainly because I need it. So I decided I needed to go and share this with my pastor and ask him if we could bring this Bible study that I had come across to the church. And probably the scariest time in my life was the day that I went in to talk with my pastor about this Bible study, because I said to him, hey, I think we have women in the church that need this, and oh, by the way, I need this because I've had an abortion. And I truly thought that my pastor was going to look at me and say, you know what, thanks, you're not fit for leadership here, and you're going to need to move on. I truly thought that's what he was going to say to me, and that was not the case. He was gosh, in that moment for me, the hands and feet of Christ, and he looked at me and he said, Jill, you're right. We need this Bible study here, and I think that you're the one to lead it and to make sure that our women have it. And like I said, that's something only God orchestrates.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just been an even wilder ride since then. It felt like a wild ride leading up to that, but it's been quite a journey since then as well.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely amazing, because I'm sure, and you say that you bought into the lie that your growing child was just a clump of cells, and that is one lie, obviously. And then there's another lie that once you've had an abortion, or if you ever had one before you were Christian or after, either way, that there's no hope for that. There's no redemption for that. And there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of, from the people I've spoken to, they've said that there's and you just mentioned it as well, that you fear that people will judge you and kick you out because you've done the worst thing, and there's no hope for that. Whereas the gospel says, well, I should say that rather in the Bible, the prodigal son, after he's wasted his father's inheritance, he's squandered it, he's gone out and done all these things, he comes home, his father runs to meet him. His father welcomes his children home, and it's the same. And that Jesus forgives entirely. That's the gospel. That's the good news. If it's not for people who've done wrong, then who's it for? He came to save the righteous, right? No, it says he came to save those that need a savior. And so that's a very powerful thing. And so that he's using you. And I agree with your pastor that you would be the one to help women out of what they find themselves in the aftermath of dealing with the abortion. And so you find yourself on the front lines every day. And I really wonder what, almost like if I could be a fly on the wall and see what that's like. Do you ever see things that go against what most of us would expect? I mean, a lot of us have an idea of who would come to have an abortion, but I'm sure that's very different in real life.
Thank you for joining us this week on Mountain Heartbeat. You can hear the rest of this interview next week on same channel, same time, or you can find this and other fine programs on SoundCloud or on YouTube.com. Just search for Joe and Rosa Hopkins. You can find more of Rosa's blog on lifeinsidethehouseontherock.com, or you can find us on joeandrosahopkins.com. On either of those, we have a contacts page. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to book us to play or sing at your church or youth group, we'd love that as well. We do country gospel and some Christian contemporary. And we'd love it if you joined us again next week on Mountain Heartbeat. Certainly, we could use your support, and we'd love for you to listen in, learn more about abortion ministries and pregnancy ministries and how we can keep those hearts beating here in West Virginia. Thank you very much, and we'll hear from you again next week.